Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Edge Tech Podcast. This is your disembodied host, Howard. Also, here with me, Sans Body, I've got Antonio Rayner and Devin Gamble. Tonight, looks like we're going to be talking about battery life. I've had the iPhone X for about a week now. I'll let you know pretty much what's going on with that. We're probably going to get into a little bit of mecha, which all you anime fans, that's going to be pretty cool. And then I think we're going to wrap it up with autonomous vehicles. So, autonomous vehicles are kind of taking off. We're going to talk about it. So, I guess let's go ahead and get this started. Yeah, boys, I've had the iPhone X for a week now. Me and Devin were talking about it earlier in the week. Battery life on this thing is incredible. I usually take it off the charge about 5 o'clock, 5:30, depending on when I leave the house, and it's easily getting me through an entire day. Usually gets me till about 40%, 9 o'clock when I go to bed. Depends on how much YouTube I watch in the car on the way home.
Yeah, I was really impressed with. We did kind of a battery rundown test earlier in the week, comparing the new iPhone X with my Galaxy S8 Plus, and I was really kind of impressed. I mean, the X, if you guys aren't aware, has a smaller battery compared to the S8 Plus, but it seems to make much better use of that available battery capacity. I mean, Howard was, running from really early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night with
Mm,
still, battery left to go and
yeah.
actually using the phone throughout the day. So,
Yeah, it was like I said, I was really shocked about it because I mean, coming from the 7 Plus, that battery would get me through the end of the day, but by the end of the day, it would be flashing at me, "Hey, I only got like 5% battery life left," and I'm like, "Man, I gotta hurry up and plug in." And like I said, sometimes uh, because 495 will be a parking lot, I'll just watch YouTube or something in the car. So depending on how bad traffic is in the car, and during this week there was a pile up, a genuine pile up on 495. So, needless to say, I put some YouTube hours in on the phone, and even that day, I only got down to 10% by the time I went to bed. Maybe it was probably closer to 15, but it was definitely under 20. But still, to be going well over 14 hours on one charge is pretty incredible. I mean, it just it just goes to show you like where battery manufacturers are getting to if this is what they're coming out with. And I guess part of it relies on software. Right? Devin, you probably know more about that than I do. I don't know how software interacts with like or how software can affect battery life or anything like that. But yeah, like
I
what I
mean,
was.
yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's hugely effective. The 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 reason why Android had really terrible battery life, despite having larger battery capacities, you know, until fairly recently, was because of the way that background processes were programmed to run. So you can pull, the cellular radio is kind of like a big chunk of what's drawing power. Most of the time, until recently, you didn't have like a big little CPU core
Hmm.
setup. So all the cores are using essentially the same, wattage. But as long as you weren't pegging them at full utilization, your big usage in the background was your cellular radio polling for information. And then you have, deep sleep states, which Intel does with their mobile uh, and also with their desktop processors. So that, that's programmed at a firmware level. But then you can also have your actual applications, their uh, programmatic approach to getting information in the background, their approach to analyzing data and continuing to run in the background. So it's hugely important how efficiently you program your applications for background running because your big issue is standby. These phones tend to have like very similar um, not all of them, but the premier ones. So the X, the 8 Plus, the S8 Plus on Samsung side, maybe the V30 from LG for or and the Pixel as well. We'll put that there, even though it's not a really well-made device, but it's still in that category if you get one that's not malfunctioning. They have the
Jeez,
same
shots
amount of
fired on
like
that.
yeah, yeah. That I mean that phone's it's like a crapshoot. Like even if you get a good one, it's not really a great phone, but then you have a good chance of getting one that's defective.
Jeez.
But they have the same amount of time with the screen on. Essentially, if you sat there and did a battery rundown test with like a web script to keep refreshing a web page or running a video on repeat, you'll get the same amount of screen on time, which differentiates the really great phones or is their standby time, or their kind of low usage, intermediate usage time. How quickly does it go back into a deep sleep state? How quickly can it recover from that? What background processes it does it decide to run in the background? All of those things have a large effect on your battery life. You know, you're
Hmm.
not using your phone for 15 or 20 hours, even though it dies in that time span. So most of that battery usage is happening in the background as it's trying to get data and retrieve text messages and all these other things that you're not seeing and you're not actively involved in the background. So how that's handled, dramatically affects battery life. I mean, the iPhone has a screen that's the same size as the screen on what like the S7 Edge, or the close to the same size as the S8, but it's getting dramatically better battery life than the S8. The S8 Plus has a larger battery in it, so they're close to comparable as long as you're not doing any weird stuff with the S8 Plus, like
Right.
leaving the screen on.
But I
They're
think you
they're
had the what was that? The on-screen display thing. You had that set
yeah
on, and that's when you got
yeah
like the worst
yes
battery life.
yeah. So you get again, you're gonna see the same amount of battery life if you're just watching videos on both of them consistently, but your differences are coming out in standby time. So with the always on display on the SA Plus, even though it's not as bad as an LCD panel, it's still stealing like a percent 1.25% from your battery life every hour that it's on. So by the time you get to 10 or 15 hours into the day, you're 15 or 20% lower than you would be had you not left that so-called feature on. And it's not necessary. It's got a notification LED, and if you need to see the time, then just press the power button. It's kind of a unnecessary luxury, but
Or buy a watch. I mean,
yeah,
Let me ask some questions here. Let me ask some questions. Let me jump in here. So I remember y'all talking about doing this test. I got a couple of questions about this test. So first off, do you keep your GPS location on?
mine was set
yes,
on, yes.
yeah. I don't turn that
Okay.
anymore.
I mean, honestly, recently I started keep mine on. Before I used to always turn my GPS off, my location off unless I'm using Google Maps or something. Um, what is your screen resolution set to?
Mine's not modifiable.
Let's see. For the test, it was set to full HD plus for the SA plus, which is like 2200 by 1080. Yeah, because the screen's not the typical 16 by 9. But
No,
here's
no,
the
I
thing.
got. Go ahead.
The screen resolution, I looked into it because I paid for a 1440p screen. Why is it defaulting to a lower resolution? It turns out it has far less of an impact on battery life than the always on display does, because it's not, if you change the resolution, it doesn't stop powering the pixels, contrary to popular belief. It just reduces the load on the GPU. But if you're not playing video games, and I've actually engaged hardware acceleration for 2D animation, so it's a little bit of extra work, but like for the typical person, unless you're playing video games, your GPU is not doing much, and changing the screen resolution doesn't make the display itself, use less of the pixels. It just
Right. The same
means
number
your
of
GPU,
pixels are being
your
used. It depends on how many of those
it's
pixels are fine tuned down to display the image. So if you have, let's say you have 10 pixels in a cube or whatever, how many of those are displaying what dimension of the image? If you have 4 pixels displaying one part of the image or 6 pixels displaying one part of the image, that's
I'm
really
exactly.
where
not
resolution comes in.
okay. I
Yeah,
guess my
so
next.
yeah,
Go
it
ahead.
doesn't change battery life that much. That's the only thing I was gonna say. It's like 1 or 2% as opposed to 15 or 20% at the end of your day, which is really negligible.
So did both of y'all keep your Wi-Fi's on all day?
Yeah, because I work in a bomb shelter, so
It was on, but I'm not connected to a Wi-Fi network at work. I
I mean,
don't I don't
I
have
mean,
the
only because
the
I
sec-
said, when you keep it on, it's constantly searching for a network, so that's gonna pull battery. That's gonna pull some of your battery life as well. I'm not trying to say like the iPhone is better or worse. I'm trying to see if there's any little small differences because like searching for Wi-Fi or like your GPS location, Yeah, it's not gonna kill a lot of your battery, but over time it will kill some of it.
So that's not
Yeah.
necessarily true because the Samsung software is actually smart enough now that it won't actively seek Wi-Fi networks unless you have it set to pop up a thing saying "I found wireless networks" or you're actually trying to connect to a network. And most of the time, it'll just run in like a cold, not a cold, but like a warm standby. So it'll be on, but it'll be in very low power mode. And then once you, and that's basically to just ping and check to see if a Wi-Fi network that you normally join, like your home Wi-Fi, is available. But the iPhone, for example, does this too, and Samsung does it basically the same way. Basically, what it does is if you have it set to pop up a notice that, hey, there's open Wi Fi or there is Wi Fi around, then it'll constantly check to see if there's Wi Fi there. But if you have that turned off, it won't. It'll just sit in standby until you actually go in and search for a Wi Fi network. That's why sometimes if you open up the Wi Fi app, it'll show just a blank list, and then sometimes it'll take a second or two to actually populate because it hadn't searched for a Wi Fi network at that time.
I got you. No
Yeah,
offense, Howard. You didn't answer
my
my question.
mine is set
I
to
mean, my Wi Fi
notify
was
me.
on the entire time, so.
Yours was on. So, Devins, what about yours?
Mine was on. It's not connected to a network during the test, but it's set to all it's set to stay awake or all stay on always while the device is asleep, and it's also set to notify me if open networks are available. So
Okay, so
those two
his
things.
settings were basically set to be as though the Wi-Fi was on and connected. Mine was actually on and connected, but his was set very similarly. So there might be a little bit of discrepancy there because he wasn't actively transferring data to and from the device. But I don't think that would add much overhead to it. I think Wi-Fi's gotten pretty power efficient now. If anything,
No, I mean
it would have gave
It's
the bump to him.
it's certainly more power efficient than a cellular radio. That without a doubt.
yeah.
Uh, I mean, you're not having to broadcast as far as a lower transmission power.
Hmm.
So, but no, those things used to be much worse, particularly with Android. So the GPS polling used to be terrible. Push notifications used to be terrible. Wi-Fi power usage used to be terrible. But these things have all gotten much more efficient. The Wi-Fi is constantly on the phone, and maybe if I turn it off, it'll get a little bit better. But it, in my experience, the cellular radio has always been a much more power hungry form of data usage on the phone, even with like exceptional signal, like next to a tower. It's still using more power for that than it is for a typical Wi-Fi network.
Yeah.
And
I
the
agree with you.
Google, yeah, the Google location services are off. So the location, the GPS location or the GPS module is enabled or whatever, but it's not doing anything at all until I open an application that's utilizing it. It's not letting me know, hey, there's things nearby. All of those things are turned off. I don't have any use for any of those. So it's not doing anything until I turn it on to the best
Yeah.
of my knowledge, or until the NSA turns it on, rather. I don't know. But
Hey, you better not talk about our chief sponsor. This podcast is sponsored by the National Security Agency for a safer America, NSA. Not actually
but
sponsored by
no,
the NSA.
no. Really getting back to it, the S8 has a battery that's like 10% larger than the iPhone X, right? But the iPhone X gets like
I think it's
dramatically
more than
better
that,
battery
isn't
life.
it? What is the battery size on the 8 S8 Plus?
3,500 milliamp hours,
Yeah,
and then
the iPhone
the
X is like
S.
28.
No, I know. I said the S8. So the
Oh, whoa,
S8
whoa,
has
whoa, 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 whoa.
a 3,000 because it has the same screen size. Because they're
Yeah,
not really comparing apples to apples if you're comparing different
right,
screen
right, right.
sizes, which
I
is the
gotcha.
biggest power draw really. And then different disparate battery sizes. So the S8 and the iPhone X have iPhone 10. Sorry, the iPhone 10 have they have they have similar battery sizes. Although the S8 has like 10% larger battery, but it has much worse battery life. Its battery life is closer to the battery life of the iPhone 8, which has an even smaller battery than
Hmm.
either of those two. So it's just really impressive. Of course, you have like an in-house GPU or full SoC really. System on chip is completely in-house, but there's also some real software optimization going on there. But yeah, no, it's really impressive. But I mean, the big elephant in the room is why we have a conversation about making it to the end of the night as being good battery life. We're all old enough to remember before displays took over the phones, where phones would
Oh yeah,
last like
phones would last
two,
days.
2.5, 3 days.
Because the
And
phones you got to think about those old phones. You couldn't do as much as you can do on a phone now.
well, the thing is, even now, there's phones. Like I had a phone previously because I'm a frugal guy. You know, it's a nice word for cheap. So I had
Uh,
a Miami
yeah,
produced
okay.
blue. I had a Miami
I-
produced
He
blue
means
phone.
that
No,
he means that sarcastically, everybody.
Uh-huh.
no, it's true. I buy refurbished stuff. I buy used stuff. I'm frugal, you know. But the I just not with phones anymore because I've gotten burned with like IMEI numbers and stuff, and it
Auto
failing.
blacklisting.
Yeah, failing memory chips outside of warranty periods and stuff, and it's just not worth it. You know, I'll eat the depreciation on a $700-800 device every couple of years. That's fine, but it's not worth the headache. But I bought a blue phone from this Miami vendor. It's mainly produced in China. They just kind of design it. They're like a knockoff Apple or whatever, but they make
Okay.
budget devices. There's an Android device. It had a lower powered like MediaTek processor. MediaTek's a Chinese like Qualcomm kind of equivalent, but also budget. But it was an 8-core processor. It wasn't the fastest, but the phone would last 2 days cleanly every time. Like it wasn't super thick, it wasn't heavy. I think the actual battery capacity was like right around 3,000 milliamp hours. But it's possible, right? But we want the fastest devices, and but it was still capable of doing everything that you want to do. It was just not lightning blazing quick like the iPhone or the S8 Plus, where you tap on something, it's open like the instant your finger touches it. Like,
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're basically like I think you said it in an earlier podcast. I mean, we're basically holding laptops in our pockets at this point. Um, if I double click on something on my laptop, it opens fairly quickly. I expect that for my cell phone.
right, right.
Yeah.
No, no, it's true.
I
But I
don't think
mean,
that's unreasonable. Now, granted, uh, what am I trying to get at? Well, granted, the batteries in a laptop are based on watt hours versus milliamp hours, but you can boil it down to milliamp hours. They have those.
those
Oh,
aren't
what
even
is
the
it called?
same measurement. That's another complaint for me. Those aren't even like measuring the same thing. Like, so milliamp hours are measuring like current over
Hmm.
time, and watts are measuring power, which is
Yeah,
what is it,
actual power.
current versus voltage over time. So they're not even like comparable. If you even like wanted to compare them to try to figure out like
I
easily compare them and try to
Well,
figure out
yeah,
like
all the
power
parts are
usage.
there, but you actually have to like do the math. You have to like do the
Yeah,
formulas
yeah,
to
yeah,
convert them
yeah. And
back. But
why are we using different measurements for the same part? Like,
because
like
fuck you, that's
it,
why.
it's like it's like the transfer and storage speeds. Like, oh no, we're not talking about bits, we're talking about bytes.
Oh, you're talking
What?
about like networking when you talk
Yeah,
about
like yeah,
mega
yeah, yeah,
megabits versus megabytes.
yeah,
For
yeah.
the audience, if you don't know, when you talk about data transfer across local storage, it's megabytes. But when you talk about data transfer over networking, so your internet speed, it's all megabits. So there's 8 bits in a byte. So if you look at your network speed, you have to divide it by 8 to get the number of megabytes.
Yeah. So
Multiply by
just
8. I
why
apologize. Multiply it by 8.
I don't like the inconsistency. But getting back on our battery topic, the iPhone X is super thin, it's super small, it's great, it's perfect hand size. You have petite hands.
I
Great.
think it could be wider. I got mitts. I got catcher's mitts
Yeah,
for hands. So
right. So it has great battery life now. It's not dramatically different in size from the S8-ish, right? Um, but that has a bigger battery. Why not put a bigger battery in that? We have a Razer phone that we were all talking about, yeah,
that has
earlier
a
in the week. Razer's
4,000
releasing their
milliamp
own
hour
phone.
battery.
Yeah, it's got a 4,000 milliamp battery in it, which should give it, dramatically better battery life. Why aren't Samsung or any of the other Android makers doing that? And why isn't Apple doing that? Because Apple makes other devices that have fantastic battery life, where that's
My
their like
MacBook Pro.
yeah, like that's their big selling point. Their iPad line, their MacBook line, almost all of the MacBook line, honestly, the Air, the MacBook, the Pro, like they all have fantastic battery life, and they're still thin. They're still really hard to like take apart and fix. Like there's there's still they still have all those wonderful Apple qualities, but then they have great battery life. And they've conditioned people to think like, oh, I can make it from, the morning to the evening without having to charge my phone as being like great battery life. But what if you have to do stuff that day? Not having to charge isn't like it's not like fantastic. It's not like, it's like saying, "Oh, my husband doesn't beat me every day." Like that's not something to write home
Jeez,
about.
triggered.
Yeah. That's not something to write home about. Yeah, my husband does beat me regularly, so triggered. No, but that's
You don't
nothing to write.
support domestic violence.
It's not your
Oh,
fault, Devin.
I know. I know. I'm trying to work past these feelings, but
Jesus, we gotta cut that out, you guys. I don't think we could actually leave that in there.
yeah, maybe that's fuck it.
We'll deal with that
I just
later.
said
Post
we don't
production's
support
gonna be
domestic
fun.
violence.
No, we
This
don't. We
this is a
don't at all.
PSA. The Edge Tech podcast hereby does not support domestic violence. This is a skit. We are totally playing around. Please don't sue us.
Or distracted driving. So don't watch YouTube while you're in traffic, or invest in level 3 automated vehicle for
Oh my
yourself.
god, I can't
Foreshadowing.
wait.
Anyway,
Can't wait.
but yeah, they could fit bigger batteries in. I still have big complaints about battery life. I don't want to have to be concerned about my phone not making it through the day if I'm like out and about. There's chargers everywhere around me because I know the world I live in. There's a wireless stand at my desk. There's a fast charger in my car. There's chargers all around my house. But I would like to not have to worry about that. I would like to be able to walk
Devin just
around.
hoarding wireless chargers. Just he comes in a suit made out of wireless chargers one day.
One for you, one for. I mean, they're magnetic, so I would just like slap people's
Jesus.
chargers on me, and then I would have like a big battery pack and on like taped to my back and charge people for
Wasn't that the
it.
plot of? Wasn't that like a villain in Lethal Weapon?
What battery man? I don't know.
He had
I don't know.
he had a flamethrower.
Yeah, okay, but that's what I imagine Devin. Except instead of flames coming out, it's electricity and like, but it's not electrocuting you. It's charging your devices. Like he's got Iron Man playing, and then he's just charging your devices. So it's like, oh well, he's not a villain at all. He's actually really helpful.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks,
okay.
Battery Man.
That's his new name, Battery Man.
Meanwhile, heavy-handed police action just takes him down.
So yeah, I would have to agree. Battery life is like the standard now of everything. Because I know you personally, now, like I said, when I look at devices, like I'm a true like I love the Galaxy phones. I'm not gonna say I'm a Galaxy lifer. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would switch if the iPhone ever gets something really worth my while. But like I said, everything is based on if I play my phone, if I gotta go to work, pick my kids up, and then do something after picking my kids up. I don't have time to go home, or there's no charger near me. How long can I last with me going to work, listening to music all day at work, playing on my phone here and there and stuff? And so I'm getting ready to go to bed. Like, hey, can I make it home off of one charge and not be like, oh, you have 5%, and like you said, your phone's flashing at you, like. But that has become a staple just because us as people, we starting to live busier lives and
Right.
not as at home all the time. Yeah, they chime into little battery packs. Oh, hey, you could charge your phone. Where's a little battery pack? But nobody wants to have that attached to your phone all the time when you're doing something.
No,
So,
especially like I don't like a case, like a big case. I'm full disclosure before anybody gets their panties in a bunch here. Full disclosure, I bought this with my own money. We are not sponsored, but I bought a D brand case that it's called the grip because if anybody has read my review on the iPhone X, it is extremely slippery and it likes to just slide off of flat surfaces for some reason. So the D-brand grip is obviously supposed to fix that, but yeah, I don't like a case on my phone though. Like my iPhone 7 was completely caseless. So what I'm hoping to get out of this is it's supposed to just be a perimeter type case. It's like slightly thicker than the perimeter to protect the screen in the back. Um, but yeah, like I've seen those battery cases and I fucking hate them because it's like this is too thick. Like I don't mind like a chunky phone, but now you're talking about carrying a brick in my pocket. Like,
yeah, which nobody wants to carry a brick in their pocket. Especially like you said, now it's like, oh, even with some cases, the cases make your phone feel so huge. Do
hmm
we take out the case like, oh, my phone's actually not that big at all, you know?
right. And like I said, I don't mind like a larger like thickness of phone, that doesn't really bother me. But there's a limit, I don't want my phone to be twice the thickness. Like that's a little too far. But if it's an extra millimeter or two thick, like that doesn't bother me as much as like the current thinness that it is now. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older, just like you guys are, but maybe older than some of our listeners.
hmm,
And I remember the initial iPhone, right? And then I remember the subsequent releases, like the 3GS and the 4. When the 3GS was about to be released, I was excited about getting a Mophie like juice pack case with the battery built in because I knew it would last me the whole day. So I was excited about the iPhone, and I was excited that there's this accessory that would fix a problem that I knew was a problem. But this was like 8 years ago, or yeah, it was like
yeah, it
8 years
was it
ago.
was about 8 years. Yeah, the iPhone 3GS would have just been coming out.
Yeah, so this was
Yeah,
8 years ago. But I was excited about a case with a battery to fix a problem then. So there was other problems too. You couldn't like copy and paste, right? There was MMS wasn't available, so it was like it was a work in progress. It was
yeah.
better and smoother, more fluid, better
Well,
user experience than
that
anyone
was
else.
even
But
was that
there's
even prior to before they had the App Store? Didn't it only come with like the built-in apps?
no, I'm not sure.
I
I don't.
think the 3GS. I think they released software for it later on so that it had like the App Store enabled. But well, I know the original iPhone it only
Oh,
had the built-in
I
apps,
think
but I don't remember what the
yeah, I
3GS
think
did.
you had to download them through iTunes at that point.
Yeah.
I think. Um, But no, the fact that this is still a problem, like 8 years down the road, but everything else is dramatically improved.
Oh
Like
yeah.
the camera no longer looks like you took pictures with an etch a sketch. Like you can actually watch 2K videos on it. You can use 4G LTE internet. You can do all these other fantastic things, but the battery life problem is still exactly the
Yeah.
same. Like
And I
I need
guess
I need to plug my phone in to use GPS. That doesn't make sense. Why does it have GPS in the first place? Because if I don't, then I know for sure it's only going to take me through half of the day. I know that it's not going to take me to the next day. I have to charge it every night, and this has been a problem for a decade. So we've improved all of these other aspects, but battery life is not markedly improved, other than when it dipped and got much worse in like the middle of the you know say I don't know what generation it was. Maybe that was like the fifth generation, sixth generation. It got really bad, and then it improved from there. But
are
it
you talking
hasn't
about
improved from like where,
iPhone or
yeah, for the iPhone. Similarly for the Samsung devices, they kind of
yeah.
both like decided to get much thinner at the same time. I think around the Samsung S6 and then the iPhone 6 both had really poor battery life compared to their predecessors and their
Um,
successors. They just like battery life tanked because they made both of the devices much thinner, gave them larger screens, but didn't compensate for it enough with larger batteries. And
right.
then it improved with the 7 series for both devices. And then again, uh, later on, with the most recent devices they released this year.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I guess we can give them a little bit of credit because um, they've packed a lot more processor intense features and stuff and bigger screens and brighter screens and stuff, and the battery life has gotten better, quote unquote, but it's not, like you said, it's oh man, my phone lasts all day, and like that's an incredible achievement. It's like, that's battery life should be getting better overall. But I guess we can cut them a little bit of break that, considering, look at what the original iPhone and the iPhone 3GS could do at the time. I mean, they were running on 3G cell phone networks, and that's, how much power does that actually take to run? I don't know. I'm not an engineer there, but um, the fact that, we have Wi-Fi packed into these devices, we can watch YouTube on the go in these things. We can, stream music all day, and the batteries do actually get us through most of the day is a feat, but I agree with you. It should definitely be better. It's that should be probably one of the biggest focusing points. Is not just, oh well, you're not going to lose battery as fast as before, even though we're making these things more powerful. But I agree with you. I want a phone that goes 24 hours with actual usage. Because like Antonio was saying, sometimes I'm just not home. Sometimes I go out and I stay at friends' houses and I don't have my charger with me because who just was like, oh, I'm going out. Let me pack my charger up. Like,
Yeah, life happens.
exactly. I am glad
and
that they decided to implement a standard, like a non-proprietary standard for wireless charging, because that stuff is fast.
Oh, welcome to the party.
I can genuinely get like what am I trying to say here? It charges pretty quick. You figure if I put it on if I put it on the and it's a wireless charger. I was actually shocked at that. I did run it completely dry one night where it just died out. And I didn't know wireless charging worked when it was completely dead, but yeah, it took a while for it to get from completely dead to powered on. But then after that, it took off, like it charged quick. So I'm
Well,
glad that
why
they
wouldn't it
just
work from dead? Why wouldn't it work from dead?
software control. It's picking up it's using like electromagnetism to actually charge the battery. I didn't know if that was going to be disabled when it was dead versus having it actually plugged in or not.
Uh, I got you.
Yeah, but yeah, I can confirm that it does work.
yeah, it works on our phones too
Yeah,
from a dead stop.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's the one upside of having a smaller capacity battery, is that you are able to charge faster because the fast charging, all of the standards produce heat, right? And heat
Mm-hmm.
is like the enemy to battery longevity. So you can charge the battery quickly, but in terms of charge cycles, you're going to lose capacity over time much more quickly because the battery's heating up because you're putting more current into it, and because of the built-in resistance in the battery, you get more heat because you're pushing more current through the battery, and then it doesn't last as long, right? And so, a year down the road, your battery suddenly only lasts, 80% as long as it did initially, which is another beef, right? With the brand new battery not getting you through the entire day.
Oh
If you want
yeah.
to keep yeah, if you want to keep your device for 2 years, because right now you have the iPhone X, which is a standout in processor power, right? It's as powerful as a laptop, more powerful than some of the low power units from Intel current generation. So you have that processor inside that. You have a display that has more than enough resolution. You won't get any more benefit from a higher resolution than it has now. No one can see that, yeah, unless you're like Tiger Woods or someone with like greater than 20/20 vision. So this is a device that you can conceivably continue to use for
I
3 years, 4 years,
that's
but
yeah, that's not unacceptable. I mean, I rode my 6S. My 6S would have gotten me 2 straight years had I not toyed around with the beta software. And by the way, the beta software worked. It just trying to go out of beta. Good luck. Anyway,
yeah, you have a sealed battery that's losing capacity from fast charging quicker than it would otherwise, but it would still lose that capacity anyway. And at your best, you're maybe at 75% after 2 years. And that's with never leaving it in the car, never being too hot, with you not always fast charging. You're at 75% after 2 years. And originally, it wasn't lasting you through the whole day, and
right.
now it's
Now it's
definitely only
definitely
going to
not
last
getting
you.
you there.
Yeah, it's only going to last you till 6. And not everyone is driving to and from work. Not everyone is at a place where they're working where they can charge their phone throughout the day. Some people will have to, like stand all day or walk around all day, or they're field people or whatever.
Hmm.
And so they're commuting in like a bus or something. They have different circumstances where they can't constantly be connected to a power source, and that makes these devices very unfeasible for people with these use cases. So there's a lot of room for improvement there. I
Yeah.
agree with you. We do a lot with the phones now, right? So it's at least not gotten way worse, with all of these additional functions that we've added. But at the same time that we're adding functions, we're making things more efficient. So LTE is
Hmm.
more efficient than the earlier GSM networks, the 3G networks, the HSPA kind of 4G networks, or HSPA plus kind of 4G networks. HSPA was 3G, or EVDO prior to that, or Edge rather prior to that as well. Those were very inefficient networks. They used a lot of transmit power because they weren't designed for data transmission. They were designed with
Phone calls in mind.
voice and
Yeah.
SMS transmission in mind. So once you use them for data, they would kill battery because it's not what they were designed for. It was like you just kind of hamstrung that on to an existing standard, but LTE was designed from the ground up with data transmission in mind, so it's much more efficient now, at least. The early like Verizon radios were terribly inefficient, but now Qualcomm's got it down. They're good. They're very efficient compared to earlier technologies. The same thing with the processors. We shrunk die sizes probably 4 times or 5 times since the initial iPhone, which I think we'll all agree is kind of the turnkey moment for smartphones. So since that release, we've shrunk die sizes and as a result increased efficiency 4 or 5 times. Just as a architectural efficiency, we've increased 4 or 5 times since that time span. So the devices have gotten more powerful, but also more efficient because they've been designed more and more for their actual use case
Oh
instead
yeah,
of
we've
taking.
definitely shrunk some size. The for reference, the Apple A4, which is the first in the line of the A series, uh, that some bitch was 45 nanometers. We're down to 10 nanometers now on. Sorry to cut you off, by the way, but we're down to 10 nanometers now on the A11 process. So we've definitely shrunk die sizes a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah,
That is a big deal.
yeah, I didn't even actually know those numbers. Thank you, Howard.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's that's a 400% reduction, and obviously
yeah,
it didn't
that's
happen
incredible. Yeah,
all at one time, but that so those changes have been made. We're at a point now where maybe we'll be able to get to 7 nanometers in like 3 years. They're try to get over the what is it, silicon leakage. I think Howard's more familiar with
it's
the issue there, but
so basically, because silicon's a crystal, if you look at the wafer sideways, so normally you look at it from the top, you see that round disc, you're looking at it from the top. But if you turn it completely sideways and look at it under a microscope, instead of a perfectly flat surface, it's kind of jaggedy a little bit. It's not perfectly flat. So what happens is when they plant the transistors on there, uh, as they get closer together, the electricity can arc not between the two transistors themselves, but it arcs between that little ridge of silicon that's sticking up. It'll arc between that and then arc between the other transistors. So it's like it's called the electron. I believe it's called the electron gap. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if that's the exact name for it, but basically the electrons are arcing between the transistors because there's a low enough electrical resistance that it can just spark between them, and that obviously that doesn't work. So they're trying to come up with a better material that's flatter so that they can get those transistors closer together. But it looks like I think it's 7 nanometers is the absolute minimum, and even then their yield rates on them are like 30%. So it's not very effective for mass production because it's just you lose 70% of the die or the 70% of the wafer before you get 30% of good chips. So,
yeah, but I mean, just to kind of summarize, I mean, we've I think we've really covered this topic. So, manufacturers out there, if you're listening, we're not the only people that have concluded that our devices are thin and light enough already. We would really like to see improvements in battery life. There's other improvements as well, camera performance, namely, but battery life, I think, is something you can tangibly
yeah, I
improve
think that's
with,
the next
without
frontier.
dramatically increasing the size of the phones.
Yeah, I agree. That's got to be the next thing. Like to be honest, it's like okay, the camera's better. Like I'm not a professional photographer, and at the end of the day, I'm not using this thing to take professional photos. Like yeah, I appreciate a better camera, but what like you said, Devin, I think what we really want is better battery. We want that now. You can get us a better camera, next generation, but let's get us a better battery right now. But
Yeah, better battery tech, or well, I mean, we may have made some breakthroughs there. So Samsung is supposedly saying the batteries in their newest devices will maintain 95% of their capacity over 2 years. So if
uh,
that pans out, that's an improvement, sure. But I mean, outright larger capacity because we have efficient devices, right? The X is super efficient with only 27 milliamp hours. The Android devices aren't as efficient, but they have other lack of unified hardware software problems that will allow them to reach the level of efficiency that Apple has. You're buying off the shelf parts and squeezing them into a device, and that's harder to program efficiently for. I like the 845 from Snap from from Qualcomm is going to be released to or announced or whatever at the end of this year, and Samsung's planning to make phones with it like 2 years, 2 months later, rather.
Hmm.
That's not enough time at all to to
To do
make
anything.
yeah, it's not enough time to make a unified experience or a unified synergetic connection between the hardware and the software.
Oh,
So
here you go with them big words.
you're gonna have to put a bigger battery in an Android device just because they're outsourcing their stuff instead of designing an in-house like Apple is. Apple's designing everything in-house, so you can design from the ground up your OS and your system on chip to interact, perfectly. And then you give your developers less access to the underlying system than they do with Android, and so they're less able to keep things running in the background. They're less able to drain battery with runaway processes or memory leaks or what have you. I mean, this is a tangent. I won't even go down this route, but
Yeah, we've
um,
been talking about
they,
batteries for a long
yeah,
time, so
yeah,
I think
yeah.
we beat this horse to death.
We can roll on, but
But you know who could stand to gain from improved batteries is the military, specifically into our next topic. See what I did there with a good segue? Boom. But yeah, our next topic, we're talking about mecha here. Um, so I've always been a big fan of mecha. I'm sure a lot of people, probably people that listen to this podcast, saw Pacific Rim. If the military was like, "Hey, we need guys that can pilot giant robots," I'd be like, I'm like walking with a walker. I'd be like, "Where do I sign up, Coach? Is this where I go to drive the robot?" I would totally do it. Like, but yeah, the day the U.S. military comes out, like, hey, we need guys to pilot giant robots, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna just go in and kick my boss's door in and be like, hey, yeah, I quit. See ya. Like, I haven't even signed up yet, but I'm quitting already. Like, especially if it's an experimental program, you know they're gonna take anybody. Like, yeah, we don't know what this thing's gonna do. Yup, right here.
it may explode when you
That's all
fire
right.
it up.
I could deal with that. You mean I'm gonna be a giant robot pilot? Hell yeah, I'm in on this. But all jokes aside, I don't even think the military is actually working on it. I know they're working on exoskeletons, which is where actual like battery, high efficiency battery technology would be applied. But giant robots, they make no sense on the battlefield. It's why? What problem does a giant robot that can like hold an entire person plus like solve? So that'll never, that's like a way pipe dream. But in all actuality, Raytheon has built a prototype exoskeleton that they've had people in it, and they can pick up 200 pounds like they're lifting a feather. Like it's great. And obviously on the battlefield that's amazing because our soldiers are carrying around 200 pounds of gear, if they're fully loaded out, and you can dramatically increase the distance a mobile foot unit can move if you take the weight off. So having those exoskeletons is a tremendous benefit. But that specific exoskeleton from Raytheon, they have no battery support for it because it requires so much electricity that they're like, yeah, we just don't. The battery itself would take up all of the capabilities of this thing to carry around. So they just plug it into the hardwire and just roll through. But so if we can figure out how to get high current, high efficiency, long lasting batteries, exoskeletons could potentially become a real thing. And I think
Yeah.
that's obviously a tremendous thing to have not only for military applications, but things that work in the military obviously get adapted to the civilian market. And imagine what you can do at a FedEx shipping center, if you have exoskeletons that can lift heavy equipment around. Imagine how much more productive people in general would be if you had exoskeletons for work, you know?
Or you could just use an entire robot for a UPS shipping task. Like, there's no point. There's no point in investing that much money in having a person trying to like soup up a person when you could just buy a
Just buy a
robot.
robot.
I mean,
What's that?
like,
Especially if they live in Baltimore.
Boy, what's
wait,
that?
what's that?
Especially if they live in Baltimore.
What?
Yeah, I don't.
It's just mystery shots fired.
I'm
Like,
really confused by that myself, actually. Like,
Because you get somebody in Baltimore, some exoskeleton be able to lift all this stuff. The, think about all the stuff they would do. You do crazy shit now in Baltimore.
that's true. But yeah. But luckily, right now the battery will be dead in like 10 minutes, so it won't matter. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
picking
go
up a
back.
car. No, I'm not. Never mind. No,
Yeah,
but that's another thing. Like the Atlas robot by Boston Dynamics, which is obviously coming out of DARPA for their after the Fukushima plant disaster. They obviously needed robots to go in there, but they were having a problem with the terrain because tracked and wheeled robots weren't having a good time. So, of course, Boston Dynamics stepped up, and they're just one of the companies, obviously, but with their Atlas robot, and same thing that went through its growing pains. It was tethered to the wall, and then it had a battery, and they were like, "Oh, we get a half hour worth of battery life out of this," and it's like, "Wow, really? Well," and that was dramatic improvement. Like a half hour out of this whole big battery, this battery that weighs as much as I do. Like,
Hey, take it or leave it. I mean, like I said, as a dramatic improvement, at least you get a battery for 30 minutes versus being tethered to the
mm-hmm.
wall the whole time.
And I understand that, but yeah, battery tech. Circling back to our original topic, which I'm not going to go into too deep, but yeah, circling back, battery tech needs to improve, and
I think battery tech is going to be a running um, an underlying topic for our all three of our topics
yeah,
for this podcast.
yeah,
It's an issue that underlies everything that we do now that computing is at at the forefront our of our lives. But yeah, exoskeletons, mecha suits don't really have any use case. Like
right.
there's no, like you said, there's no point for them. But the exoskeletons, if they can be made lightweight enough, and if you can find a way to power them, those would be very, very, very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can make our soldiers faster, fight fatigue, allow for heads-up displays, extra sensory perception, and different wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum that the eyes can't see, and build those all into kind of a central computing unit that ties um, back into like the central commander or whatever. And I know there's helmets that do that now, but you can even expound on those. But the only thing, like, if it were me, the only thing I would worry about is like being out in the field. You're in this suit, what's going to be undeniably a heavy suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because military, everything is heavy. Like a lightweight military vehicle is like 15,000 pounds. Like I was reading about, because Humvee is suing, or the maker of Humvee, AM General, is suing the Call of Duty makers for using Humvees in all of their
Oh yeah, because
releases.
it's a trademark.
But
It's a trademark design. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I was reading about the replacement to the Humvee. I know this is going to be a quick tangent, but one of the requirements was that it be 15,000 pounds. Like that. I was like, don't go any higher than that because it's supposed to be a lightweight by military standards. Like 7 tons is lightweight
Yeah.
for
Well,
a vehicle, a four-wheel vehicle by military standards. So the exoskeleton will undeniably be heavy. So if it runs out of battery, you're in the field.
like,
Now
you
you're
can't
just
carry
stuck in
that.
this.
Like, yeah, that's gonna have to get doffed as fast as it
Yeah,
can. Like, that's gonna have to get shedded. There's no way you'll be
yeah,
able to carry that around.
yeah. And that's tech you don't want to leave. So you'll probably have to like
Oh
blow
yeah.
it up or something,
Oh yeah. And how much is that costing me? I'm a taxpayer here. And
Yeah,
granted,
well,
I'm all about whatever we got to do to keep our country safe and blah blah blah. That's neither here nor there. But still, I mean, you can't be affording to just blow these things up in the field because the batteries went dead. Like, you guys didn't
exactly.
work out the
But my,
battery
my
problems
question is,
first.
I'm like, I think outside the box sometimes. Why they haven't looked at the technology that like we part of our podcast batteries. So like, why wouldn't you like rechargeable batteries? Use like the kinetic energy they're using to move or whatever. Use it to charge the battery back up, or some type of renewable source or the heat they're gonna use, something like that to charge the battery up, so that way the battery quote unquote never dies.
That's
That's an
perpetual
excellent
energy,
idea.
buddy.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's no such thing as perpetual energy, but
But I'm saying like if you making this pack, and I'm supposed to be moving, lifting things up. I'm using some type of energy or some type of motion. So use that kinetic motion to charge the battery back up.
I think
but
that's possible. I think the problem is that the ways that we collect like motion energy, kinetic energy right now are inefficient. So the because you have to think, you're literally you're literally replacing the energy that you're sending out to move. You're replacing it by re
by moving,
um, what is it? By collecting.
Regenerative.
Yeah, by you're trying to, if I understand correctly, you're trying to capture the energy that you're expending from the battery by capturing the frictional energy that you're, from your movement. So it's going to be inefficient because some of that energy is going to be lost in heat.
Yeah.
Some of the energy is going to be lost in you actually moving around. But I think it's a great idea. It would at least extend the battery usage. My car has, something kind of similar. It at least recaptures some of the from
Hmm.
some of the otherwise, lost like braking energy and like free wheeling drivetrain
So I'm
energy
glad you brought that
to
up because
reach
that was my
to
next
reach
point. But go
to
ahead.
recharge the battery, but it just doesn't. It won't be it's not perpetual, right? Because you're going to lose some of that, but that's a great idea. I imagine there's a lot of smart people working on this exoskeleton, so I'm
Oh
sure
yeah,
they're
of
trying to
course.
figure out how to squeeze that into.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I'm pretty sure too, but I just think of random stuff because I'm just kind of like, there has to be a way to capture, like I said, at least not all of it, but at least some of it. Like, like I feel like if you don't try to capture some of that, you're just gonna waste it. Like,
oh
obviously
yeah,
lose some of it, but you might as well get as much as you can back from that to put it back into the battery.
right, right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
Well, yeah. What I was gonna say is, like you were saying earlier, Devin, is, you have you so you're freewheeling, so your wheels are spinning in one direction, they're spinning forward. The problem with like an exoskeleton is the joints aren't spinning. A, but B, they're moving in 6 degrees of freedom. Forward, backward, up, down, front, back. Stuff like that. Uh, so it's very difficult to capture regeneration from that. You never know which way it's going to move next, and then how do you capture it from that kind of movement? It's easy to capture. So the way an electric motor works, obviously, it spins in a circle. So do the wheels on your car; they spin in a circle. So instead of applying magnetism to the armature that's spinning in a circle, you take the motion of the wheel spinning and you use that spinning the armature to actually recharge the batteries. But it's nearly impossible to get regenerative charging from a joint that's moving forward and backward. Randomly. You never know how long it's going to move forward and backward because when you actually switch it out to actually do the regenerative, you're actually changing the circuit a little bit. And yeah, if you have to do that on the fly, it's not instantaneous. With the Prius, it's like a 5 second gap between when you stop hitting the gas and it actually starts regenerating.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So it's going to be complex. I imagine it'll be a gyroscopic approach
hmm
for the exoskeleton. So the joints will have to use some sort of gyroscopic magnetic motor construction, so that they're able to account for all of the degrees of possible movement, and also to allow it to disengage, kind of like have a clutch sort of disengagement
yeah,
to allow it to recapture that energy. But it's going to be highly complex with very low tolerances, and um, but I mean that's where it's going to have to go. I mean, quantum computing hopefully will be able to allow the central unit there to
do
calculate
that
and
math really
respond
fast.
quickly
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, quickly enough to actually make use of the very rapid changes in direction.
I mean, we can only hope. Like I said, I mean, I would like to see it not only for the military applications. I know this part has been centered around like military tech because obviously a lot of civilian stuff that we develop comes out of military contractors. Just because the largest checkbook in the world is the U.S. military, so we get a lot of research and development out of that. But think about like the medical applications. If you have somebody who is a paraplegic, uh, if you have this advanced set of legs, hypothetically, quote unquote legs, you're potentially giving that person the ability to walk. If you have somebody who is born missing a limb, you can theoretically replace that limb with these types of equipment. Now, I know a lot of that stuff obviously exists now, but and there's great strides coming in that market, but a lot of this is coming out of this type of research and development coming from these exoskeletons because not only do the exoskeletons give the soldier the ability to go longer and carry heavier weight, but a lot of times they even have like predictive movement. So they anticipate, if your arm's moving forward, it can anticipate where your arm is going to travel to and to that kind of degree. And that's how it kind of gets the assistance to you. So if you can come up with technology that does this kind of predictive motion and stuff like that, that obviously translates into the medical field as now we can We're giving, patients who are paralyzed from the waist down, or are missing a limb. Now we're giving them, another chance to walk, basically. So it has a lot of applications moving into the real world. And then not only that, circling back to, I guess, the gamer in me here is, if you talk about like a Deus Ex, that's the pinnacle thing, is like, oh, human augmentation, like, cut your arms off and get new arms, take your eyes out and get new eyes. And I'm like, man, I don't know, would I do it? And that's kind of like an internal battle with me, is, where do we go from here? If we have these exoskeletons and we solve, paralysis hypothetically, where does it stop at that point? Do we go into like full augmentation where it's like, well, your legs don't work, let's take them off and put robot legs on there so that you can walk? If you put,
Yes.
I would.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That no doubt about it.
if
That's where
that
we're
was,
going
if it was in that case, I think I would do it. If it's like you have zero chance of ever using your real legs again, it's like at that point, it's like, yeah, go ahead and just take them off. Put robot legs on there if it's going to mean I'm going to be able to walk again. Like, but then the question becomes, okay, Devin, your legs are healthy. Like, there's nothing wrong with your legs. Do you cut your legs off and get robot legs? And it's like,
I don't know. There's nothing wrong with Pamela Anderson's breasts, but she made them
jeez,
better. So
did she though? Because I'm not a big fan of
there,
implants. So,
there's nothing wrong with what's that guy's name? The Jenner guy. There's nothing wrong with
oh,
his
Bruce
penis,
Jenner.
but he cut it off and made it better for him. So
I
yeah,
see.
people will probably improve their legs. The real question is whether you'll be able to compete, like the big
Oh,
ethical
like a
question,
like
like
Olympic style.
athletics.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sort of thing will be a question. But there's no doubt that people,
yeah. I guess that's
because
kind of true.
it's your body, do whatever you want with it. People cut their tongues down the middle to look like snakes. Like people pierce all throughout their bodies. People remove their ribs
Hmm.
for whatever reason. People like them, they like modifying their bodies. So if you can make your legs better, like, oh, I can now dunk like Michael Jordan, or I guess 20 years from now it'll be like LeBron James. At that point, it'll be the idol or whoever's next. But
Stephen Curry.
yeah, well, yeah, maybe.
No,
Maybe.
no.
Yeah, I'm just
he
playing.
he doesn't jump very high. So but at least for the leg thing, maybe like making your eyesight like his, because
Yeah.
he can shoot from like half court perfectly over and
Hmm.
over again. Or maybe make your arms, your arm, hand, eye, improve all of that so the coordination is perfect because you're using like all of these, bionic modifications.
But that's
Um,
that's the real question, is like, where does it end? Because I mean, Antonio, you're a big football fan. I enjoy football myself, but I would consider you much higher fan than I am. Would you watch a football league where it's like, oh, everybody in here has robot legs and robot arms and robot eyes? So not only can they outrun
I mean,
everybody, they can throw
what I,
perfect passes 100 yards, and they can catch them every single time. So it's like, does it?
I mean, at that point, would I watch it? Maybe just to see the hits, but at that point in time, it's kind of like I wouldn't. It'd be like playing Madden, where
Right.
your team's a 99, the other team's like a 60. It's kind of like
Yeah,
the
I'm gonna
hits are going
walk
to be
all over
amazing.
you.
Someone's
Yeah.
going to fumble it. It's not very exciting football. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
that,
like
that's
something.
the next question, is, are the hits going to be amazing? Because if you got robot legs that can just juke somebody out real fast, are you going to get hit?
I mean, if I got robot legs too, why wouldn't I be able to catch you?
That's a good question. But are the hits going to be amazing? You might be able to
yes,
catch me, but
yeah, yeah. The hits will. I mean, you probably, if the NFL lasts that long, one, because there's like a whole underlying current of chronic traumatic encephalitis. Um,
What?
the
Cephalitis? What?
yeah, it's inflammation on the brain from
oh yeah,
the hit
from concussions and stuff.
the hit over time. The encephalitis is just inflammation of the cerebral spinal fluid in the brain and the spine, but it causes like the same symptoms as dementia. The brain looks the same as dementia. It looks like it's like melting away basically, but it's from the constant, concussions and head-on collisions and brain
Hmm.
trauma, small brain trauma from, 250-pound men colliding at 20 miles an hour head on with just their
Trust
heads.
me. I mean, I understand. I had a concussion, so I get exactly what you're talking about. I mean,
Yeah, but they keep playing through them, right? And we're not built like Rams. Like Rams do that well, they just do it for mating season. These guys are doing this all year long, but they
Yeah.
have like super thick muscular necks, so they don't get the same kind of like head snapback that our thin, should be playing with sticks and getting bugs out of trees. Necks are getting from slamming into each other. But yeah, if you have bionic legs, obviously they're not going to be running 20 miles an hour anymore. They're going to be
Yeah.
running like 35, 40 miles an hour.
You remember that scene
Uh,
in iRobot when all the robots jump on his car, and then
Oh yeah.
he shakes the one off, but then he just gets up and starts running after him. Like,
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
what it's gonna be like. Just no, it's gonna be
yeah,
the $6 million band. No, 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 no,
yeah, yeah,
no.
yeah. I mean, I would still watch it even if they're, perfect or nearly perfect or whatever. I would still
I
watch
don't know.
it
I think it would
because
just get boring because it's like, oh, Joe Flacco just threw 100-yard perfect pass. Well, of course he did. He's got robot eyes and robot arms. Like I'd expect
well,
it.
but that's the thing though. If he's perfect, that means the guys on defense are perfect. So you just have like it's like fucking IndyCar racing or something like that. Even though
And they're
all the
making
cars are
another
like
left turn.
yeah. No, no, that's NASCAR racing. NASCAR racing also
Oh yeah,
sucks. But
yeah.
IndyCar racing is at least there's more twists and turns in it. But there's just, all the cars are super powerful, way, way too powerful. All the drivers are
Yeah,
they're
the
they're
best.
yeah, their reflex rates are so fast that they would like crush any human in like Call of Duty or whatever, or any reflex game that you think of. But it just takes like, the most minor differences or whatever for the winner to be determined. Just a minute shift here or a minute twitch of your hands here, and then suddenly you're in second place or in first place or whatever.
Right.
Same thing would be for football. I would think. I think there would be an adjustment period, but if both the offense and defense are perfect, obviously they can't both be perfect. If they do, then obviously the league's just going to end. If
Yeah,
everyone's
because it would
just
just get
playing
boring. Nobody would
you
watch it.
just have yeah, you just have 0-0 games all the time because the defense is playing perfectly and so is the offense, and they just cancel each other out.
Yeah.
Like then, then no one will watch. But I think it'll come down to like it's like it'll just be like now, but faster and with smaller margins of error. So you won't have like the shitty quarterbacks we have today just throwing the ball and completely away from any receiver nearby or the entire offensive line, which is really the hard part. I feel bad for those guys because they're getting like 400-pound dudes falling on the back of their knees and shit and constantly getting injured. So you won't have that. Your bionic knee gets fucked up and they'll just go out. You go
They'll
out and you
literally
fix
just
it on.
pop your leg
Yeah,
off and pop a new one
yeah,
on in the locker
yeah.
room
They'll
until you get back
they'll
out
fix it
there.
on
Yeah.
the sideline instead of shooting you up with fucking Novocaine and telling you to shake it off. Like they'll just pop another leg out. Like
Right. At that point, it just becomes like another piece of gear. It's another helmet or another shoulder pad.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean the players are interchangeable as it is now. So I mean they're well paid, but they're just they're like slaves or something. So
All right, we've branched
it'll
off into
just
a
build
whole
on them.
different topic now. Now we're getting into the NFL and politics, and this isn't the right podcast for that. That's a Three Guys Media Group podcast.
Autonomous cars. So it's funny. We was talking about this the other day, and how Tesla's pretty much, I guess, the big man on the market right now. I happened to watch this video of Little Duval. He's a comedian from Florida, obviously Duval County. That's how he got his name, Little Duval. And he's literally in his Tesla smoking while the car is driving itself. And I was like, you know what? That is some shit I would do if I had a Tesla. Like sometimes when you're just that tired, you just want to do something. I just want to sit here for a moment and just relax, eat something, do whatever, and let the car just take me where I need to go.
What?
And I was like, how dope would that be?
The other day,
But
on my way home, I saw a guy. I don't know where he got a newspaper from, but he was genuinely reading a newspaper while his car just drove in traffic. He had a blue Tesla Model S, and at first I was like, man, that's unsafe. But then I was like, you know what though? That's the future. That's coming where I can just be in here taking a nap while my car gets me home. I have an hour and a half drive on a good day. Like, you
speaking
know,
of nap, so it's funny about that. The Teslas, it feels when you go to sleep,
uh,
and it vibrates to
oh,
wake
it
you up. It
vibrate,
doesn't.
yeah.
Yeah, it won't allow you to go to sleep. So you still have to be moving and stuff. I don't know how it's sensitive, but it seems like if you're asleep or whatever,
Well, yeah,
but you have
that's
to be
right now because the car is not designed for full autonomous. It's not stage 5 automation. It's
yeah.
barely stage 4. It's beta stage 4 automation, but But yeah, once
But
once like full blown stage 4 automation comes out and stage 5 hits, like it's going to be incredible. What you're yeah, there at that point, there's no steering wheel, so it's like, what can't you do in your car? You know, imagine Antonio, you're a big family man. You got multiple kids. Imagine being able to, get in a van and enjoy family time while you drive to Virginia Beach or whatever, to relax.
What? That'd be the best time. Oh, we're going to grandma's house.
Yeah,
Everybody
exactly.
get in a car. Let's play a game while we're going. Like that would be awesome. That would be the day. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
Devin, imagine what you
especially
could
like
do in an autonomous car.
what?
I said, imagine what you could do in an autonomous car.
Uh, I would love to have an autonomous car, honestly. I'm happy there's so much progress being made. There's so much competition. We should be there pretty soon. I mean, every automaker is working towards it. Many of them have like limited autonomy, like at least like emergency braking, adaptive cruise control available. Some of them have like automated lane changing, like Mercedes does, Audi does.
oh the
I think
parking too.
yeah,
Hmm.
the parking as well. Volvo has lane changing, which is complex, right? So it's both speeding up and slowing down with traffic, but then if you initiate the turn signal, it'll change lanes for you as well. And then Tesla's autopilot's on a whole different level. It's looking at the terrain coming up, the GPS on the navigation, steering entirely around corners and stuff for you. So it's taking you basically from, doorstep to doorstep
Yeah,
almost.
almost
So
almost without your intervention. Yeah, so
yeah, it would be fantastic. I'm frequently like on my laptop in the morning. Luckily, someone else is driving sometime, or yeah, actually,
Sometime.
yeah, it's true. Actually, sometimes I'm actually driving. I don't support I'm not encouraging people to do this, but sometimes my laptop is on and I'm actively driving. So it would be great if I could do that the safe way and the car would be driving itself, and then I could get work done and do stuff I want to do on the computer. Um,
well,
or take a nap
it's
like you
completely
guys.
true. It's in my case, it's traffic is so bad on 495 that I welcome the day that they have, the quote unquote autonomous only lanes. Because, what really causes traffic? Traffic itself isn't a robberess of problems. It's somebody cuts somebody off, so they slam on the brakes. So the person behind them slams on the brakes and brakes and brakes and brakes. But then when that event is over, the person in front hits the gas and speeds up. And then that person has to react to them speeding up and speed up. And then blah 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 blah. So that's your Ouroboros right there. There's nothing there. How many times have you been in traffic and then when traffic finally opens up, it's like there's no cops, there's no wrecked cars, there's no dead bodies, there's no ambulance, there's nothing. It just opens wide open. That's
That's
I've never
fine.
seen
because,
I've never seen a dead body on the side of the road after
hey man,
traffic.
I've seen
Like,
some really bad accidents on the road. So this is what happens when you drive 110 miles a day.
yeah, that's true.
But anyway, uh, but no, that's what it is. Somebody made a lane change and they cut somebody off, so that person slammed on the brakes, and then the person behind them, had to react and slam on the brakes, and then it just goes down the chain, and then everybody reacts and it clears up. But the problem is the driver is the problem. The original driver who cut the other driver off is the problem. The reaction times to accelerate after the event is over is a problem. If you can take the driver out of the equation, it's traffic is almost a non-issue. There's no more traffic. The volume of cars isn't necessarily the issue unless you're trying to stuff 4 lanes worth of cars into 2 lanes. Yeah, then that's a problem, obviously. But if you've got traffic, or I'm sorry, if you've got road capacity, the problem is the people behind the cars. They're what's causing the issues because people can't drive, especially here in the Delmarva area where we're at. It's how many times has it started raining and it's like everybody loses their minds. It's like, oh man, it's drizzling out. It's like, who cares? Just go. What are you doing?
It's not unique to here. I hope that the automation of vehicles makes people own less vehicles because that's a major problem. We don't have roads that could accommodate the number of people that live in any of these large metropolitan areas having vehicles and all driving them at the same time. There doesn't matter how well they drive. Like studies have shown that in order to avoid complete lockdown of traffic, you need traffic to be going like 12 miles an hour all the time just to accommodate all of the cars on the road to at least keep the traffic moving to stop the complete
Like total
gridlock
gridlock,
traffic.
yeah.
Yeah. But if we have people drive less, on their own constantly. And we have like automated vehicles where people maybe share the automated vehicles, like, a taxi service the without the driver, essentially. You can take a lot of the cars off the road. People don't have to use public transportation, which can suck too, for a myriad of reasons. Or they can continue to take it, but we can't even accommodate the cars we have on the road now. Like, just imagine, 15, 20 years down the road, trying to accommodate every person that wants to have their own car and drive it all the time on the road. You can only expand the road so much. The highways, in our area at least, there's a lot of like areas where there's free land next to the highways, but into the actual cities and the suburban areas, there isn't space to make the streets wider. And I don't know if you guys have played like City Builder, but there's nothing you can do after that. If you can't make the streets any bigger, you're stuck. And stuck now is bad. I can only imagine what it'll be in 20 years because there's worse traffic than we experience for sure. The traffic is worse in South Asian countries like Indonesia, Thailand. They have much worse traffic. Mexico City has much worse traffic than we have. There's other cities that have traffic where just trying to get 5 miles takes you 2 hours versus trying to get 50 miles taking you 2 hours. So it could be a lot worse. And I hope we never ever get there. And my hope is that automation, complete vehicle, level 4, is it? Vehicle
So
automation.
so stage 5 is total driverless. That means there's no input for the driver. Stage 4 is the same as stage 5, except that there is an input for the driver, and at that point it's recommended that the driver actually pay attention to what the vehicle's doing. So
Okay.
the only official in production stage 4 is the Tesla's autopilot, but it's not, fully you're not supposed to use it, obviously. It's just like a, if you are going to use it, make sure you keep your hands on the wheel type thing. But
Right.
No, you can't have your hands on the wheel.
you know what I mean? The hypothetical, or
No,
metaphorically, keep your hands on the wheel.
that's true.
Yeah.
The only other thing I realized about the Teslas too, like it goes back to battery life, where
Mm.
you're going to get certain mileage with the certain battery types you have. But then it was funny, I saw that. But when the hurricanes happened,
Yep.
Tesla sent out a software update will allow certain people in Florida to get additional like 30 or 50 miles. So it's kind of like, are they holding back the mileage or what?
No,
I mean,
they're
if you
just
could do it, go ahead.
no, they're just selling to they're selling two versions of the car without actually having to produce two versions of it.
I mean, I know you had the 100 one, and you had like the 61
It's the
for the
same
battery
battery in
size.
it though.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
software lock it. Now, so Tesla's official statement on that was, what they do is they prevent you from running the battery completely dead because it's detrimental to the battery, obviously. And that is partially true, but then of course everybody's like, well, if I want to run the battery completely dead, I want to run it completely dead. And it's like, well, yeah, okay. You think you want to run it completely dead until you go to recharge it and it charges quote unquote 100% in 6 minutes, and then you take it off the charger and it's completely dead because now the battery is shot because you ran it completely dead.
yeah.
But
And that
yeah,
battery's like $10,000 to
yeah,
replace.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then you know what the next complaint's gonna be? Oh, I don't know what happened. I ran the battery completely dead, and this piece of shit now doesn't charge right. Blah blah blah. And it's like, well, yeah, because you. So that
But,
in that case,
I mean,
it's a protecting people from themselves. But but yeah,
yeah,
to your credit, they are doing that where they sell the same battery in both cars and they just software lock out the additional capacity.
I mean, I guess I look at it too, like I said, since I'm being a family man, it's like I got wife, 2 kids. I realistically can't take that car on a long distance trip because I'm gonna be maxed out. I think the highest one you get like 300 some odd miles. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like,
Well, I
so
mean,
it's like,
automation exists on gasoline powered vehicles. It's not like it only exists on Tesla. Now, Tesla is.
but I'm gonna say gasoline, but I look at it like this, like, so I know someone who has the BMW. I think it's what, the 550D or something like that. So he's running off a diesel. So
Mhm.
literally, he went from here to Chicago on one gas tank,
Ah,
from Virginia to Chicago on one gas tank. I'm just kind of like, whoa, really?
well, yeah,
And I
because
have in my head,
diesel's crazy efficient.
but that's what I'm saying. So it's kind of like that's what he did with that. A Tesla. Think about how many times you had to stop, find something to recharge, wait for it to recharge, and then keep going on your trip. How long that would
Hmm.
extended your trip? You know what I mean?
Just to Chicago, you probably only have to do it once or twice with a 300-mile range. Chicago's not that far away.
Yeah, but
Not to mention, do
that's
you want?
still downtime, though. Is what he's saying.
Yeah,
No,
it's no point. It's no point. I have to stop. Where it's kind of like, not just stop, pump gas. That's 5 minutes or less. Boom, I'm gone. Versus I gotta stop. It's gonna have to charge. And probably gonna
but
have to charge it all the way back up. So that's I gotta figure out what can I do in that meantime.
but you don't want to sit in a car for 7 hours with kids anyway. You're gonna have to stop anyway. I drove to Chicago
I'm
last
saying,
year. I stopped in
I'm
Cleveland for a whole day because that's a long drive. Like, it's not even
me
actually 7 hours. It's like 9 hours to get to Chicago.
So
That's a
so
me
long
being
drive.
me.
here's
I probably only stop honestly, and that 9 hours. I probably only stopped twice. It would been one to get food and gas. The second time was to get everybody a bathroom break, stretch my legs, and kept going.
Yeah, so
I
the
would.
food break is when you could recharge the battery. But I agree, the Teslas aren't great for long, like across country trips. Not at all. So
well, so
there's
here's the thing
no getting around it.
about autonomous vehicles, though, is the reason you stop is because you need a break. You know, when you're driving, you're using a lot of mental capacity. You're scanning a road, you're making decisions. That takes a lot of energy out of you. So you kind of stop because you need a break. Not only that, you're not only are you stuck behind the wheel driving, probably getting frustrated because traffic's real bad, but then you got kids screaming in the back, blah blah blah. But the thing about autonomous vehicles is if we're at stage 5 autonomy, that's gone. You don't have to focus on the road. Traffic is potentially significantly less. And then, the kids might be screaming in the back, but you could sit there and take care of them if you need to. You don't have to be focused 100% on the road, At that point, it's cars don't have forward facing seats. The seats face forward and backwards so you can interact with each other.
That would
Yeah,
be great.
I guess I look at it too. Me being me, even on long distance trips, I hate making stops. So I try to make as less stops that I have. Like so, anytime I go like from here to New York, I stop once, and the only reason I stopped that once is because I made my wife drive to Delaware, and then from Delaware we switch. Then I drive the rest of the way. But if it wasn't for us switching, I probably would never stop. I'll just keep going all the way through.
Yeah, yeah, a trip like that, I'll drive all the way. But the times that I've driven to like upstate New York, the Canada area, Chicago, Cleveland area, those are longer drives, and I do have to like make like one big stop. I can't
Yeah.
drive
No, you got to stop
that
and get something
long.
to eat and all.
Yeah, yeah, I can't drive that long, and it's just because I don't know. I'm a big guy. You sit at work for a few hours before you get up and go walk around and stretch and stuff. Like 7, 8, 9 hours sitting is just it's very uncomfortable, and I'm probably like foofy or whatever for being uncomfortable with that because I know
Bougie.
people that drive like 24 hours straight or 30 hours straight just stopping to use the restroom and keep pushing, but I
I
get
don't.
uncomfortable. I want to
I
get up,
genuinely
move
don't know how
around.
you could do that. Like, my back would
I
be
don't.
killing me.
I, kn- there's a guy I worked with that drove from Baltimore to Washington, the state, in a day and a
Good
half.
lord.
Like this guy drove, whatever, 2,700 miles in like 36 hours. So, and I was like, was it bad? He's like, nah, just drink coffee. It was good. But he's also the one. He grew up fast. He's from South Korea. Apparently, they grow up fast there, and it's a harder life or something. Well, from what he told me. So, um, but yeah, I mean that's a problem for. I mean, like I said, our running current for our entire podcast is battery
Battery
capacity is
life,
an
yeah.
issue. I mean, they're heavy and expensive in the Teslas. They're the biggest limiting factor stopping people from wanting to adopt them because it takes with a dangerously high-powered charger. It takes 2.5, 3 hours for it to recharge the battery. Like with 240 volts in one of their superchargers, it takes twice as long if you're charging on just a normal outlet. And then you only get like Antonio's saying, you only get you won't
300
even get
miles.
you won't even get to New York with the
Right.
battery capacity of their most expensive model. That's like 100,000+ The cheaper models won't even get you, 80% of the way there. Um, and so that's with a super heavy battery. Like it's not like they're
Yeah.
not trying. Like a big portion of the weight
Right.
is the battery because the motors don't weigh as much. So that's our problem. Someone out there listening, have a breakthrough with battery life. like like I mean that's really what's killing us right now.
What?
Yeah.
Please, if you have a breakthrough with a Tesla, I would buy one. Even though they have now, like the one that's like $35,000. Like I would buy a Tesla. I think the Teslas. I guess I love Teslas. Just the mileage part. Like
I don't think you're
in fact,
wrong for liking Teslas. I mean, I also like Teslas. Like, I'm too big to fit in one, but I like them.
I mean,
Yeah,
I never tried to fit it with Grant. I'm a big dude as well. Grant, I'm not as tall as you,
Yeah, you
but the
might.
one.
So width wise, like yeah, I'm a big dude, but width wise wasn't too bad. It was the height that killed me. My head was literally maybe an inch below the ceiling. Like if that car had rolled over, I would have been dead. But it needed to be a
Yeah,
little bit longer because of my legs are long and needed to be a little bit taller. You know, I'm 6'4", so it's like yeah.
Did you sit in the Model S or the SUV one?
No, this was 5 years ago. So this was
Okay.
only the Model S. This wasn't the SUV model one. But
that's interesting because I sat in a Roadster prototype um because I'm from like Tesla's homeland and some guy happened to have one in the hills where my girlfriend lived when I was in high school, and I've fit in it just fine. And the S is like small-ish inside, I guess, if you're a big guy, but just about any car is kind of small if you're a big guy. But I'm with you guys on Tesla. That'll probably be the next car that I get. Will be like a pre-owned Tesla.
I was gonna say, all right, Moneybag software
I,
developer over here. Man, what am I doing wrong in my
I
life?
what he
Look,
wasn't
I
listening.
tell
I said I'll get the one that's $35,000. He
I
talking about
know, man.
pre-owned and all that. I
Uh,
said no.
he's gonna get like a eighty
yeah,
thousand dollar Tesla. Like I'm a
new
systems engineer and I can't even afford that. This dude's over here
new
like,
new cars depreciate super quickly. So I would rather buy the $80,000 car 3 years later when it costs, 40 something or 30 something $1,000 versus
mm,
buying the $30,000 car new.
all right. Well, we're way off topic again. So, but alrighty, boys. Yeah, this sounds like a good place to call it quits for tonight. Really appreciate everybody listening to the Edge Tech podcast. Know it went out a little long. Who knows? Maybe you guys like it long. Let us know in the comments. Of course, as always, visit edge-tech.net. New articles. We're coming to YouTube really soon. Probably going to start uploading the podcast here next week. So be on the lookout for that. We've also got videos coming really soon. Again, we really appreciate everybody listening. I'm Howard Chaplinsky.
I'm Antonio Rayner.
I'm Devin Gamble.
Thank you very much and take it easy. Very much and take it easy. Very much and take it easy. Very much and take it easy.